Engagers, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of using games and gamification in our daily lives, for example, to learn what we are teaching. And I am Rob Alvarez. I work at IronHack, teach at IE Business School University, and so much more, and host this podcast. If you have an extra second, please go ahead and subscribe for free to our email list at professorgame.com/subscribe. Hey, Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have Fabian with us today. Fabian, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but before we get to that, are you prepared to engage?
I am prepared to engage, and you have pronounced it correct, Rob.
Not too bad, not too bad. I have this sort of mini game with myself to try to pronounce names decently. So we have Fabian Haridien. Haridien?
Well done. Well done. That's a first for somebody outside of South Africa getting that right.
So I'm trying my best, years of experience trying to pronounce names. I hope it's sinking into me eventually. Well and we have Fabian with us today because he is a Gamification Digital Enablement Manager, and as well, he sits on the Gamification steerco at First National Bank, South Africa, with years of experience delivering gamification projects across learning, sales performance, and across the entire First Rand group. He believes that it is seldom that an individual finds their passion and their calling, and yet he believes that gamification is his. It's a passion, it's not a job, but rather a way of life for him. His journey to make sure that he can share his passion with everyone he meets. That's a journey he's on. And this passion has been extended to his organization, where 2,000 staff members attended a gamification masterclass that he held. And he has been delighted to be named among greats recently in an article by Growth Engineering. And his motto is, show me a problem and I'll show you the possible solutions. So, Fabian, are we missing anything from that intro that we just gave?
No, that's brilliant. Well read. Well done.
Thank you very much, Fabian. So let's dive into it. We would like to know, Fabian, what does a regular day or a week, however you want to sell this, like we want to be there with you, want to understand, what does being Fabian nowadays feel like?
Well, lately, I think I had a chat to you before the session, but probably a day starts off with sunshine coming into my room. I can't sleep anymore. The first thing I do is open my machine, and it's firstly to see what's happening. Is there any queries coming in? Have I caused any chaos today with some of the solutions that I'm putting out there? But if it's all calm, then start to look at the reporting. How are individuals behaving within some of these solutions? And then start looking at prepping for the day. Normally starts off with quite a lot of meetings, I must say. But once I've managed to survive the meetings, I love them early in the day so that I can preferably try and concentrate. But generally, I start working on the next solution. I always start thinking about the next week, start prepping. I spend a lot of time thinking of some of these solutions, even before I've put pen to paper, start drawing or coming up with a narrative. I spend a lot of time thinking, researching, finding what's happening out there. Is anybody else working on something like this? And how can I draw experience from that? So generally, that's how it starts. And I always plan to make a lot of time to read and to research, but that plan never works out exactly that way. So your day is always quite busy. I always say that gamification is not one of those things that you build and leave it. It requires constant evaluation to ensure that things are happening the way you want it to take place.
Amazing. Sounds very exciting. Plenty of things to do. Plenty of meetings as well. Nobody loves those usually. But, it is the way to go pretty often in many organizations. And I think, there's a good side to meetings as well. So let's get on with that and actually go for a difficult time, Fabian. It's probably not going to be a meeting, but it's one of those times that you would call a fail or a first attempt in learning, perhaps even your favorite fail when using gamification. Can you tell us, please, that story? We want to be there with you and take some lessons as well from that story.
My goodness, what a lesson learned. I think probably I'll take you to my first fail. And the first lesson I learned, I think it was about in 2016. I just discovered the software Mambo.io, and our CEO said, is there anybody that can work the solution, can, see how to use the software? And I quickly went onto it, had a look at it. I'm like, no, man, this is easy. I can work this. This is no problem. But he just discovered gamification. And he said to me, okay, Fabian, what I want you to do is I want you to go on a course. I found this course from Professor Kevin Wellback, Coursera, completed the course, and he says, okay, fine, well done, you passed. Now I want you to create your first gamified solution. And I must say, what a scary situation, having to create your very first solution, not having a network. That, like, now I've got a network that I can contact. It's like, guys, this is what I'm working on. Then I had nothing. I had no network. I didn't even read a book outside of that course. And now I have to go and create my first gamified solution. Oh my goodness. When I created that first, when I launched it, there was so many gaps in it. Some of the rules were so open-ended that users were exploiting it. That they were actually, but everybody loved it because they said, they've never seen users so engaged on a platform before. But it's because users were exploiting some of the rules that are put in place. And, I had to learn quickly, oh my goodness. And I saw the behaviors coming through, and I had to quickly start looking, how can I tweak these rules to not sort of make it seem that I made a mistake right here? How can I look at up-and-coming rules for next week and for the rest of the month? Because this solution had to run for an entire year. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm well out of my depth. But I must say that actually sparked something, and I thought to myself, there has to be a better way to try and sort of navigate this whole setting up of rules and trying to ensure users engage. Because one thing I did learn out of that is that with the right rules and with the right events put in place, people will interact with your solution. They'll always try and find loopholes. They'll always try and see how they can push some of the mechanisms that you put in place. And from that time, I actually ended up setting up something that I've always worked on. It's always been part of my arsenal of tools I use when I develop solutions, is the game economy. It's helped me to sort of map out the entire user journey, start looking at all the events, start even sort of looking at those events from a weighting perspective, the potential for the user to complete the event. How much of an opportunity will they be able to complete that event? Starting to look at, once they've completed it, what are the feedback loops? And then essentially also start looking at win states and states of failure that the user might find as part of this journey. So how can I sort of address all of these characteristics of the journey by trying to balance all of this engagement, all of these metrics, these rules, these rewards, to ensure that I have a consistent engagement across the entire journey. So a good lesson learned. And I must say, a great tool that has formed part of my arsenal, like I said, and it's really benefited me in a lot of solutions that I've developed since then.
That sounds amazing. Lots of experience to take from that, Fabian. And, plenty for the engagers to take in. I mean, engagers, if you feel overwhelmed with all that information, feel free to pause, maybe go back, listen to some of that again. Plenty of lessons that we can take from that experience. But Fabian, let's spin it around. How about we actually go for one time where things actually went right? Things, on the first try or the nth try, it doesn't matter. Things that, it's maybe one of those things that you would like to call a proud moment. We want to hear that story. We want to hear to the success factors. We want to be there with you and have that satisfaction, that happiness as well from that success.
Yeah, no, definitely sort of, I think probably the proudest moments. After that, I did get that solution, the next iteration. It worked really well. But I think the next proud moment of mine was one of the first solutions I created at F&B. And that solution was put in place for staff that had to learn this very complex sort of platform and tool within the bank. And basically, you've got a whole lot of analysts, you've got solution architects, you've got IT individuals that you have to try and motivate to say, forget about work today. I want you to learn something new and I want you to engage with the solution. So essentially, what I developed there is I created a narrative around this complex tool, split it up into multiple modules. And basically, I must say, we had like a huge amount of the group engaging and actually battling and fighting each other to want to be the top performer. We in the organization, generally you see it takes about 60 days for staff members to complete their training. These staff members took on average 3 days to complete their training.
There you go.
That was like, oh my goodness, proudest moment ever. Really loved it. And again, I think it's drawing on the support of the network that I have and also understanding the users that need to engage with this platform and with this solution. So I think that really made a difference in developing something that was, well, I've never expected the engagement to be on that level.
There you go. Good stuff. And this training was at the bank, right?
Yes, it was within the bank, and it's now used to train all new staff that sort of joins that group, and to train existing staff to as sort of like constant reminder on how they're supposed to work with this tool, because people become very specialized. So they only know their aspect of the tool. They don't understand that there are probably 9 other aspects of it, and they don't understand how they fit into the bigger picture. So this solution helped them to understand how the things that they're doing on their aspect actually relates to the rest of the tool and the rest of the individuals that have to engage with the tool.
Sounds amazing. Sounds like a big success. So engagers, take those lessons in.
Yes.
See all of the things that Fabian has been doing. Is there any 1 or 2 things you'd like to highlight from that experience, Fabian?
One thing, ensure that you account for overperformers, because there was a couple of, it was very much based around team-based engagement or team-based learning in this tool. But we had individuals that were top performers that, they sort of messaged me or bugged me regularly. At what time will the modules be released? I'm like, no, I can't tell you that. That's going to give you an unfair advantage. You need to be prepared. You need to keep on refreshing, check, but I know it's on Monday. It's every Monday that it gets released. Also make sure for underperformers that you put enough rules that you allow underperformers to be able to catch up, but that it shouldn't be, the balance between that shouldn't be unfair, that, those top performers that put in the effort, that they don't feel that, oh my goodness, you are like, it's almost like you're helping these underperformers where they should be putting that effort in. So it's trying to get the balance in the rules, and then also understand that you're going to have late adopters of the solution. So you're going to have individuals that probably a month into the solution or maybe a couple of weeks into the solution realize, oh my goodness, this has been available. I've missed it. I've been so busy with work. But how do I still have an opportunity to earn or to gain some rewards along the way? How can I still help my team to be successful? So it's making sure that you've accounted for these different individuals and their different performances along the way, or lack of performances along the way as well. So definitely
Amazing.
something to be cognizant
keep in
of.
mind. Yeah, to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah.
So Fabian, with all this experience, all these things that you've done, as you mentioned, all the books that you read, all the courses that you did, I'm sure that at this point, when you are facing a new project with gamification, you do it a certain way. Let's call it that way, right? Do you follow some steps? Like, how do you do it? When you're facing a new project? What are your what is your thought process? What are the things that you do after that? We'd like to sort of get into your mind and understand that a little bit better.
So very first thing, because gamification is still, I think it's still growing within South Africa, but it's still something that I need to still judge, and understand what is your understanding of it? When I deal with these different business units. So the first thing I do generally is when I have a take-on meeting, is just to sort of gauge with them. So what is your experience around gamification? Then to try and have a little mini masterclass, because we're about to go through this journey and creating this gamified solution. These individuals, they understand their business. They understand what are the areas that needs to be improved, what are they trying to achieve. But when I'm asking or working through this framework, I need them to understand, why am I asking this? I want to understand, what is your objective? Who are the users that we need to engage as part of this journey? And then once I've got a good understanding, or they've got a good understanding of gamification, I start kicking off with the framework. So what I found that works really well, I use the Blue Rabbit framework from Bernardo. I found that it works really well. So what I like to do is try and sit with these teams. Some of them have weeks, months to sit and analyze their what needs to go into their solutions. And some of them maybe have like a couple of days, but I find that the framework is quite flexible depending on the type of engagement you need to have with the team. And then it also helps me to come up with a solution and to test it before I start actually building it out. So that helps quite a bit. And then I think the next step for me is to start looking at this game economy. So the game economy, once again, I start looking and I start imagining this journey. Start looking at the behaviors that are going to take place within it. Is there any gaps within it? What feedback mechanisms do I need to build in? And then after that, once I've got that game economy mapped out, I wish you could see my desk right now. There's loads of drawings. I start to sketch and I start to draw. I start to try and use a lot of paper as part of my conceptualization first. And then once I've got that out, I then put it into sort of a digital format, and then I can start briefing the dev team on sort of like the builds. But yeah, so that's generally sort of looking at it. Again, initially part of that journey is you want to gain some of the users' input and maybe understand a bit more of the users that needs to engage with your solution. But one thing I've noted with the teams is that that's one process that you don't just do at the beginning. It needs to be done all the way through your solution. You need to look for opportunities to get feedback, to understand what your users are experiencing within your solution. So yeah, that's my process, very, very quickly, very high level. But I must say, it's the best part is the drawing part for me. That's my creative release. Start sketching. I'm not the best drawer, but there's a lot of stickmen and arrows and all of these lovely things, and somehow the creatives managed to interpret that into something beautiful. So yeah.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks a lot for that, insight into your process, Fabian.
No problem.
Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification. And Fabian, talking about these things, your experience, your process, the ups, the downs, in your experience and what you've done, is there anything that you would like to call, a best practice? I don't like to talk about silver bullets or anything, but one of those things that you say, well, if you do this thing or you think about things this way, it'll at least make your gamification project a little bit better.
I think, like I said, if I work using that Blue Rabbit framework, I've ensured that I've thought of most of the requirements as part of the journey. You try and think of as much as possible. Using the game economy as well, I think that helps me a lot. But also to understand, I think because I work with the users that I need to engage with, so I've got a very good relationship with them. So when I'm building or designing these solutions, I try and work very closely with the business unit, almost simulate into the team. And also when I look at sort of like either the customer or part of the team members within the organization, I try and interact as much as possible with them so that I can get a lot more closer into understanding them, how they engage, what are some of these external factors that might inhibit them to engaging within the solution. I think it really helps me to develop a solution that at the end of the day has a greater chance of being successful, where I actually feel sorry for those individuals that don't work within the organization, don't work directly with the customer. You're sort of like far away from the customer. You get just this data to say, oh, well, the customer engages in this way, they've done these purchases, but that's within that scenario. It's outside of maybe the gamified experience that you're about to create. So if it's outside of that, how do you expect these customers or these users to behave? How do you ensure that your solution is potentially going to be successful? So I think it makes it so much harder, but I think I'm happy where I am, working so close to my users that are potentially going to engage with my solution.
Amazing to know that you're happy with what you're doing as well. That makes a lot of sense. And for you engagers, if you cannot be that close, look for ways. There's sometimes, there's creative ways of getting closer to the actual and final customers, people who are actually using the things that you're creating. So use your creativity. If you can't be there, do something about it.
Yeah, I think I've just been lucky with this, being that close. But I think definitely that's a good point from your side.
Amazing. So talking about recommendations, you've given your recommendation, that best practice that you were mentioning. When you're hearing these questions, when you're sort of feeling the vibe of the podcast, does somebody come to your mind? Is like, oh, I would really like to listen to this person answering these questions, or, I'd be delighted to hear this other person, like sort of a future guest for Professor Game.
There's a whole lot. I must say, if I think about Bernardo, I love the way he gets excited about when he creates these, when he talks about some of the solutions that he's busy with. Jane McGonigal being one of them as well. But one thing I would love to hear, and it's probably somebody brand new. I've got a few individuals, and I'll definitely send them through to you. But I would love to hear somebody brand new to gamification, maybe like probably a year into things, and I would love to understand, how they're experiencing it right now, considering there's such a wealth of content and you've got this huge community around you that can support you. How are they experiencing it right now? How are they finding users or even designing for companies at the moment, those companies' understanding of gamification? Because when I initially started, companies would say, hi, Fabian, can you create a gamified solution for us? I was like, okay, cool. What do you need? We need some fun. Okay. So
I
now
love that
we need
answer.
fun. Okay, you need to give me a bit more. In what scenario? Okay, what are we working with? So I would love to know, what are these designers or consultants dealing with at the moment?
Amazing. So keeping up with that recommendation, is there any book that you would recommend the engagers? And of course, let us know why you recommend that book.
So definitely a book. And again, I think I'm going to stick to the newcomers. I would definitely recommend a book, Gamify, How Gamification Motivates People to Do Extraordinary Things by Brian Burke. I wish I really had found this book when I initially started off. It's always great to learn from the lessons of others. And I've always tried to do that, to listen to speakers out there and listen to others, chat to others around how they've developed gamified solutions, and then make sure I don't make the same mistakes. So I think definitely for those starting out or new to gamification, I was going to say new to the game, but new to gamification, I think definitely start this journey there. And then there's loads of other books to carry on with, but I think start there, learn from others, always look for that opportunity. Yes, you got to learn from your own mistakes, but try and learn from others.
And that's a very good way where books are great, right?
Yeah. definitely.
Amazing. So, keeping up with that, but now instead of focusing outwards, let's focus inwards. What would you say, Fabian, is your superpower? That thing that you do at least better than most other people?
I think definitely storytelling. Yes, I get a little bit, I go way too deep with analyzing things and trying to work out all the detail, but I love storytelling. I'm sure you can hear by my voice. I get excited around some of these solutions. And I think that's what helps me to sort of be infectious to others, to get them to understand gamification, to understand the journey that I've been through, and to understand that it's there's more to gamification. I think my superpower is definitely storytelling. I think I've got that sort of nailed down. That superpower.
You definitely do. I'm sure it is as well a big part of the success that you're having, for sure. But Fabian, now we have arrived to a very difficult question. And it is all about what would be your favorite game?
Oh my goodness, that is a hard question. I think that's probably the hardest one yet. Look, if you had asked me, say, about a year ago, I would have said, I really enjoy Call of Duty. I really love it. It's just at that point, I think it had a very good narrative. It really kept me engaged.
Sounds amazing.
Look, it was amazing, and I think since they released the new sort of version of it, I even Vanguard. There we go. It kind of fell off, and I started seeing things coming into the game that I'm like, no, that doesn't fit the era, and sort of that didn't sort of appeal to me. But all-time favorite games, I love games like Diablo 3. That's one of my all-time favorites. It never gets removed from my console. Even if I haven't played it in probably a year, I would suddenly pick it up after a year and start playing it all the way from the beginning again. I just love how the character builds and how you can unlock new elements and see this whole journey and relive this journey. So, yeah, definitely one of my favorites. I love the Diablo franchise.
So, Fabian, you mentioned several games. Do we keep Call of Duty? Do we go for the Diablo franchise? What are we going for? That's what makes it a difficult question.
It does. It does. Look, I would still vote for the Diablo franchise. Um, I definitely would. I think that has, even over the years, it's sort of stand the test of time. That's it's a great narrative. I'm even looking forward to when they release the next iteration of the story, because then what I'm going to do is, before I to pick up that next story, is I'm going to replay all the other versions, so just so I can get this refresher, and then I'm going to take on the next one. But I would never go back and play all of the Call of Duties, because that would just be, oh my goodness. There's some terrible ones along the way. Sorry if there's anybody from Activision listening. But there's been some terrible ones along the way, but that I do not want to relive. But I must say, the Diablo journey is something I would love to live again. It's a great, great storyline. And yeah, like I said, definitely looking forward to the next iteration of it.
Great. So, Fabian, thank you so much for sharing all of the insights, all of the ideas, all of the things that you've been doing, all of your experience, all of your knowledge with the engagers today. But before we take off, can you let us know if you have any final words? Then let us know where we can find more about you and your work before we say that it's game over.
Sure, no problem, no problem. So, final words. I've learned along the way, there's not, I think you mentioned the word earlier on, there's no silver bullet. I think what you have to do is just remember to stay close to your solution. When you build something, sort of just keep on learning from it. Keep on looking for opportunities to gain sort of feedback from users along the journey. And also just remember that there's this network out there now, make sure to use it. I love the network that we have, that there's so many people out there that you can sort of connect with, and sort of thought leaders that you can connect with, and just sort of touch base, ask them a couple of questions. And I must say, from my side as well, I try and be available. So if at any stage you sort of feel that you want to connect or want to draw on some of my experience, I welcome that. The best way to get a hold of me, the safest, and to ensure that I'm going to respond, is via LinkedIn. just search for me, and you're welcome to drop me a message, email, and I'll definitely get back to you. Things get lost in emails. Things definitely get lost on my phone. And that's the worst out of the lot is my phone. It's normally laying around somewhere in the house, but emails I'm closer to, but LinkedIn is probably the best way to get hold of me.
And I can attest to that. That's how we got in contact. That's how I followed up.
Yes.
That's definitely something that Fabian is definitely looking into. So you can find that in the show notes. You type Fabian, Fabian. You can look for that on professorgame.com and find all the show notes, links to everything that we've discussed on this episode. However, Fabian, Engagers, even though this was an amazing ride, now it is time to say that it's game over. Engagers, it is fantastic to have you around, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And if you want more interviews with incredible guests like Fabian, please go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started on our email list for free. We can be in contact. You can ask for more guests. You can do whatever you want so we can communicate. You can ask for things that you would like, and you will also be informed of any things, any opportunities that Professor Game might have for you. And remember, before you go on to your next mission, remember to subscribe or follow for free using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.